All right.
I'm gonna lodge a complaint.
Good evening, folks. We're gonna get started. 6 p.m. We have two presentations this evening. Steve is here, and our county treasurer is going to be coming to do one on a land bank as well. So, anything for public comment first of all?
No.
Okay.
Do you have any comment?
All right. I'll throw it over to Steve.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thank you, yes.
We are proposing some fee changes for building permit applications. We have in front of you guys proposed numbers. We met with Tom Bars last week?
Last week, yeah.
Last week, I'm going over some of these numbers, what we're looking at, some of the justifications of what we had, and trying to update. We have not updated these 2000. We did do two. When we see one of the things on here updated, we did local law numbers 1 of 2007, being able to back charge projects if we send it out for engineering review. Besides that, we have not increased our fees. The amount of time that we go out to some of these projects, we have to increase it for our time for travel, for gas, for other issues like some of the commercial ones that we haven't added. Schluter systems, some of these we go out 45, 50 times depending on the size of the projects. They're taking up a lot more time, and it's a lot more detailed with some of the special inspections that we also have to do. So giving you a brief overview of these, not trying to take up too much of your time. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to stop and ask. We have commercial fees, residential fees, and then the zoning fees associated with signage. Our signage was grossly under also. So what we did is we did a highlight of what the existing ones are, and then we're going to give you one to what the proposed ones are, and then some examples of the two different ones so you guys kind of follow along with us. So in your packages we have the existing, the other one, and then we color-coded some with the changes, so you can kind of see not only our changes, but the changes comparison. So it'll give you guys comparisons from other municipalities of where we came up with our numbers. So Alan, if you'd like to start with the, so this is on for the non-residential stuff.
So yeah, which in your packages, the first two sheets is our existing fees as they are right now today. Okay, we just formatted into this so they look the same. And then your third sheet is what we're proposing, and then after that is our comparison. So those first two slides I showed you were the existing. So this is what we're proposing right here, these fees, and we're switching it more from a dollar amount fee to actually a square footage of the building. So if the building's bigger, then there's gonna be more inspections, they should pay more for a building permit fee because we're going out there more times. So this is what we did. And then we threw a couple of examples in there. So here we have two houses. Currently, the one here on the left is still being constructed. This is a 5,527 square foot house out on Cumberland Head. As you can see on our graph, they actually paid $807 for that fee, for that building permit. Today, if that same house came in and we approved these fees, we charged them $1,381 for it. The three different places we compared to was Queensbury, Peru, and Lake Placid. We also tried to compare with the city, but the city, when they do their building permits, they do a fee for plumbing, they do a fee for electrical, they do a fee for structural, so it was kind of hard to compare that. So these three here, we figured Queensbury is most like us, Peru is close to us, Lake Placid. Okay, well, if you want to be glamorous, you go Lake Placid, and you'll notice their fees are a little higher than everybody else's. This house down here on the right-hand side is Independence Drive. Just gave them a final yesterday. That house is 1,818 square feet. We charged them $218 for the building permit. Today, it'd be charged $454 if we approve the fees.
I'll jump in there one second now. And one of the reasons of going per square foot that we had some issues with, we don't mean to name names, but some people on the building permit, we would say your fee was based on how much the house was to build. So some people would, on the house to the right, would say, all right, the house is, it's only going to cost me $200,000 to build a house, so they would not pay as much building permit fees. Well, then you'd be arguing with the person, well, then I want build me 4 of those houses for 200,000, because you know they're selling for 250 to 290. So then you're getting in kind of a tit for tat with some of the builders. So to take that whole issue away from us, we'll go to a per square foot basis. You can't shirk square foot. It is what it is. We have the plans. We can, you know, we can do the mathematical equations on square foot, from porches, additions, the whole deal. So that will take one, to me, it makes it a lot easier to figure out fees, and it's not my department to figure out assessment. No, that's Brian's. That's their expertise, not us. So basing it on dollar value, that's why I would like to try to change it to this fee schedule.
Steve, did we try and match up with Peru? Would that be the idea?
No,
No.
we just kind of looked at them as a general and figured out, because right now Peru is a lot smaller than us. They have, you know, not even close to the amount of commercial we had, this kind of thing. But when we started going through, we tried to match up as close to as Queensbury as we could, is what we were looking at. And then on the residential side, we didn't want to make that a big jump, so you're going to notice when we get to the commercial side, it's a little bit bigger of a jump.
Aren't we exactly what Peru is?
It just happened to fall out exactly the same.
Okay.
So Peru was already charging by the square foot. So what it was is right now Peru does get $454. We only get 218 right now.
Yeah.
So Peru's getting more money
Sure.
for the size of their municipality than we are with the size of ours.
Yeah.
But, so Peru is 25 cents per square foot
Right.
currently.
Yeah. And that's what we did, is we kind of, you know, Queensbury's just a few cents more. I think they're 30 cents, something like that. So we didn't want to shock the local people who are actually building houses around here. You know, the 1 or 2 person companies, and they're building one house or 2 houses a year, and that's it. Opposed to somebody who's coming from Vermont and building 50 houses a year. You know, so we didn't want to do that shocker. We can go another 4 years, whatever it is, and then relook at residential only, and then bring that up closer to what we think it should be or whatever. But you know, we didn't want to shock the residents of the town of Plattsburgh.
I think 4 years is a long time. I think really you should be
I just throw that out there.
every year. Not necessarily it's going to go up, but you review it every year. That's my opinion.
And this is one of the, we don't see a lot of 5,500 square foot homes, let's be honest, you know, this is Mr. Church's out in Cumberland Head.
No,
right front.
that, you know, when that's done, that property is going to be probably $2 million. Because he's got that, he's got a guest house, he's got tennis court.
Didn't his other house burn?
Right, so where he's sitting right now, that house actually burned down.
Yeah.
Then they remodeled and fixed up the guest house, and that's where he's living now.
Right, yeah.
And now he's building this house, and the guest house will turn into the mother-in-law suite.
So we don't get a lot of 5,500, so that when you see the current or proposed of the one that we, 1,300, we'll probably never see that one for residential. And we don't go out to residential half as much as we would going out to, I keep on using it for Schluter example is, it's like building the sky bridge that they're going out there. And we'll get to that. The sky bridge is way more intense for the rebar inspections, the commercial inspections, the brakes on the concrete, the structural, and it's just a ton more. Residential, we can go out there and probably have it done 10 to 12 inspections, depending on if they're a very well-organized constructor, where they say, all right, we got this done, all the phases are done. Where commercial, it's just phase after phase after phase after phase.
Now granted, comparing 1,800 to 5,000, if we do 10 inspections over there on that one, we're gonna do at least 15 to 20 on this one here. Okay, so. Here's commercial, so we have Chick-fil-A on the left. This is the Glens Falls Bank that's currently under construction. So prices above, we charge Chick-fil-A $807 for their permit based off their size, and we charge Glens Falls $447. So now you can see there's a little bit more of a jump here, okay? So granted, when it comes to commercial inspections, there's a lot more that we have to do. You know, the larger the size, the more times we gotta go out there. We didn't put Schluter up there, and that would have been, especially the bridge that he was talking about. I've probably been out there already 20 times just on the foundation rebar. On a house, you're out there probably twice on rebar inspection.
Alan, was there any calculation on the number of hours you spend in the charge?
No, what we did is we just looked at how many times we'd probably be going out there, and then you can kind of relate that to an hourly rate, but since we're all three being paid at different, one's getting a salary, and two are getting hourly rates, and they're different hourly rates, any one of us could go out there and do it. So we just kind of did, okay, well, we're going out there, we're gonna be out there this many times, how does that relate? So we kind of just did an average.
So on Chick-fil-A, it was 807. Could you guess how many hours you spent out there?
Doing inspections and getting a final, I could probably I'd say 20, 25 hours at least.
25.
Yeah. I mean, you actually spend more time there at the end than you do in the very beginning. Because at the end, once they're trying to get their CFO, certificate of occupancy, to actually, open up, well, now you're dealing with all the tables inside, you're dealing with the counters and all that stuff. So you keep, I think we went back there, 3 or 4 times just on their final inspection because they weren't ready. They kept asking us to come in, this wasn't done, okay, we'll reschedule, come back, they get a little closer,
Yeah.
failed the alarm system, well, okay, we gotta come back and redo that. So it was at least 4 times just for the final inspection. So again, you can see on the side, we're a little bit higher than Queensberry. We're kind of close to Peru, but again, like I said, we do a lot more commercial than Peru does. Lake Placid, we're still well below them. So we kind of got, an average and figured, okay, we're in there. Not too much higher than Queensberry's.
Yeah, Alan, even to use the 3 comparisons you have, I mean, we could look at Lake Placid as certainly the highest, but then again, volume of activity in Lake Placid is not
Right.
what it is for town.
I mean, they're dealing with a lot higher numbers.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I mean, they put up a building, doesn't matter, it could be an 1,800 square foot house and it's still $1 million house. So that's just Lake Placid.
Yeah.
So-
Lake Placid does $1 a square foot. So just to give you an example, what $1 a square foot, just think of when they did the hotel next to Lake Placid Pub and Brewery, they do every single square foot inside of there. So their building permit fee was $80,000 for the first phase, than it was, because they did it in phases with the APA. So they were looking at $160,000 building permit fee. I wouldn't be still working here if I charged $160,000, or if we got a Walmart, that's 160,000 square foot. So they don't get those bigger ones. Also, you're dealing with the APA, so the big difference in Lake Placid is they also have to do renderings, elevations. I mean, they have to do a lot more for that building permit. They have to show those renderings, has to get approved by the APA, has to be approved by 3 different boards. So there's a difference when you start charging $1. So that is one extreme. We use Lake Placid for one of our neighbors in the extreme reason for, I shouldn't say extreme, that's what they choose, and people are still knocking on the door to build that.
Steve, have you ever had any pushback on commercial projects on your fee?
0.0.
No, most what happens is, most of our commercial projects are usually companies from out of town coming in.
Yeah.
Unless you have, a local mom and pop business, they're just, getting a little bit bigger. But then all the new things, like the Chick-fil-A or whatever's come in, I mean, those are a corporate nationwide coming here. And they make the same comment every time. This is all you're charging for your permit fee? Because anywhere else they go, apparently it's a lot higher.
I'm sure it is.
So, our last slide that we have for you is signs, and signs is always, I mean, it was unbelievable when we did our end of year report and we looked at it and we only did it, what was it, like $2,800 or
$2,268 was what we
is all we took in for all the signs for the entire year for permit fee. I mean, our signs was way low. So you can see, we top out at $110. So, once you hit that $110 mark, it doesn't matter how big your sign is. That's the most you're going to pay for a sign permit. So I think ours went up to like was it 100 square feet or something like that, and it was $110, and that was it. Anything above that, it says you have a 400 square foot sign. So if you're in Consumer Square or at the mall, and you got these big 200, 300, 400 square foot signs up there, you're paying $110, that's it. So we pulled these 2 up. Mobile one just went up, Ulta just went up, fixing to open up here the first of the month, just to let you guys know. So Ulta paid $110, and that's a 124 square foot sign right there. Mobile one's only a 22 square foot sign, they paid $30. So, as you see, if the sign is still small, the fee doesn't raise too much. And I think what we do is we have a or doing that's a minimum fee, I think, now. So no matter how small it is, it's gonna be a minimum fee, because the paperwork wise, it's exactly the same no matter what size the sign is, so there's a minimum fee. And then it'll go up from that point. So, you see Queensberry, we're kind of like riding with them. Peru,
It doesn't look like you're writing with them, it looks like they're quite a bit higher, even with the proposed fee.
take a look at it and see, you know, we're definitely not Lake Placid. I mean, you can see how their large signs are way up there.
But their Lake Placid is cheaper than you.
It's cheaper than,
That's because they have a, was it
You won't ever
244?
see
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Well, no, well,
ever see a
Just
sign
a
bigger
small
than
sign is cheaper than us.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that for that same size right there, we only charged 110, they're gonna charge 244.
But your new fee
But your new
is
fee is-
$249.
Right, so we kind of, when it came to the signs, we kind of copied them
Yeah.
a little more than we did the other ones.
Yeah, you didn't copy Queensbury, that's for sure.
Not a problem, we can. We don't mind.
The signs ones, the signs
Yeah.
is a ton of paperwork to try to find old variances, what they were. Alan going out there, looking at it, if it's electrical, to get $30 for 2-3 inspections, the time for that, it was $2,000 is a joke, it doesn't even, it's like 2 signs, but it's a very contentious item with businesses and their signs. So trying to make sure that we do the right and boxing out and the size of the signs and everything else to say, all right, the review of signs, it gets intense in making sure that we don't make a mistake, because once you give it to one, it opens up the door and then they're at the zoning board of appeals. So signs were one that I just looked at and I was like, man, we got it, because we put so much, you can't mess up a sign. Because once these signs are not cheap, the John Deere one that was in front of where the RV place is, I think it was $75,000 for that sign to make for the pole, the stands, the wind, the whole deal. So these aren't little investments. I shouldn't say, the 22 square foot one obviously is not that, but when you start dealing with the John Deere or corporate logo ones that have to be a certain color, have to be have a certain lighting, they get expensive, so they want to make sure that they're getting the right one, and we want to make sure that we're telling them the right info to research it, the size, the location, where they can go. It's a lot of intense work to make sure we say it correctly.
I think we should be more in line with Queensbury, I think we should be charging that much,
It's
not
tough to make
not
a
what
big
you got up
jump
there.
yeah.
right from the start.
Mhm.
So it's a gradual increase rather than
Yeah, well, I've been here a long time, the gradual increases don't seem to happen.
well, they're happening now.
The same sentiment that you said, Tom, before, is that maybe we should be looking at more annual increases. Right now, things are good. Commercial is probably the best that we've seen, consistent in the last 3 years. 07, 08, if we would've came with this, it wouldn't have been with the same tone of like, why are we changing this? We can barely do business. No, people are knocking at our door to come to us, so now it is a time. But I don't disagree with, saying maybe we should have our May committee that we say every 2 years or every 3 years we revisit this to see that we don't end up with the signs that we're getting $30 for a sign.
Well, it seems to me you're going to get a lot more business and a lot more things as the former airport is being developed. And since it's already at capacity at this point, unless we do it, and since we're investing in infrastructure at that airport, it seems like we should have the fees now when the people are going to be doing it. I just don't think we're coming close to anything of what the time and effort and the difficulty of what you have to do to cover it. And I'm not saying we never cover everything with the fees, because it comes out of the regular taxes too, but it should be at least reasonable, and to me, the Queensbury one is more reasonable.
But I think, Steve, I think part of this too is to rely on, and I think we all agree about this, to rely on your credibility as far as your expertise and determination of recommendations like this. Because you're in a leadership role in some of the other associations that you belong to, is that correct?
Yes.
So you have conversations with people about these things.
Yes. And Tom, I don't disagree with that, whatever. It's just making sure that what we're proposing is in line with you guys, hearing from the public of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So we went middle of the road for these. I say middle of, not to the extreme of one way, not to the extreme of the other, just say, here's a good starting point. I hear what you're saying with this, and this is where we came up with, is all this perfect right down to the T, but no, that's what we're looking for, is the input of this board that has to justify this to your constituents.
You'll notice, well, you know, we were fairly reasonable on all the costs, but residential, we just did a little bit. Commercial, we did a lot. Signs, we did a little bit less, so signs was in between. So we didn't want, like I said, we didn't want to shock anybody. Of course, we didn't want to shock you all either, because, you know, we don't want to sit there and raise everything up here 300%, and, you know, that's unreasonable all the way around the board. But we kind of just played around with it and presented this.
But you also know, from your past experience, that they'll want more signs and more signs on their building, and they want them on this side and that side, and, you know, that's a lot of extra work too.
Yep.
Oh, it is.
When's the last time there was a raise in rates here?
We haven't. We've added a couple of things into the fee schedule, but we haven't raised our fee schedule.
Did you-
Planning
How
did.
much is it, 2007?
No, that's when we did our
No.
local law
That was
to add
Yeah.
to, it's been 2000 was the only time that I know that we added some. But besides that, in 2007, we amended it to be able to charge for engineering services that we had. Nova Bus wanted, one of them was, the big thing was Nova wanted a quicker turnaround to try to get them here. But the engineering service was like $18,000, and the town didn't have a local law to say that we could charge it back. So CJ and myself drafted it, I think it's right on the front of the thing, 2000, local law 1 of 2000. So it can just be amended by our town attorney as a local law, and we don't have to go through 15 resolutions. But we have not increased these fees. I've been, this is my 19th year.
Yeah, I think we did them in 2012, I think, for planning. We adjusted the planning fees then.
Yes.
But we didn't adjust the building permit and the zoning fees.
Right.
You guys got any questions?
Yeah, but I would agree. I think every 2 years is a good benchmark. I think do the initial increase that we're looking at here, and I think it's maybe a bit more palatable for the businesses that are out there. If it's a smaller increase every couple of years to kind of, you know, to keep up with the changes, et cetera, that there are. And I think really have to make that a point, I guess, from my side, is that, you know, every couple of years.
But
make
the
sure
ones that
we
are
make that
already built aren't gonna be getting this. It's only gonna be the
Oh,
new ones that
correct.
come in that are basically
Correct.
from out of town that spend a lot more money in other places on these things, at least in my opinion. That's why we should be doing this.
Anything else? Steve or
No,
Alan?
Just so you know, there's a 3-part to it, and I'll say, Mr. Coffey, this is why it's gonna come to you, if it is the 2-part, what Alan showed you, the first was residential and commercial is under a local law. The signs are under our zoning, so that would be a zoning amendment change, because zoning is different than our building permit application fees due to New York state law. So if you see it come across as a different type of resolution, that's why.
I think the timing is perfect, because I think our next speaker may be here.
Yeah, anybody? Thank you,
Yeah,
Steve.
thank you,
Al?
guys.
Perfect.
If you guys have any questions
Appreciate
after you
that.
read them,
You
it's a
come
lot,
on.
you just reach out to us.
Yeah, thank you both.
Yeah, I appreciate this very much.
Kimberly, you can steal Alan's chair if you'd like. Come on down.
I can
Perfect
work-
timing.
Actually, I'll switch over there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't like sitting in the back.
I know, we do that, but fairness to the presenters.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
It's not,
I'd rather do this.
Musical chairs.
now it's,
Thanks for coming out tonight.
Presentation number 2. I'm lucky. How are you?
Good.
How are you?
Good.
Sir,
Do you know everybody?
we're
Some of you were at the presentation.
Yeah. I was in-
Okay.
Yep.
I will also send these to Michael because at my last presentation, more people asked for copies than I had copies for. But certainly not there, I'll give you those.
Debbie, you have this material. It's the same
I do.
thing. Yeah.
Okay, great,
And I'll share.
great. So I don't want to go too much in the weeds because half of you have heard this already, but as a general overview, the county is looking into forming a land bank to deal with zombie properties and abandoned properties throughout the county. And land banks have been very successful in New York. They've actually been quoted as a role model for the rest of the country. They were introduced in 2011 by the AG to deal with demolition, remediation, and blight in our communities. Originally 10 were set up. Those 10 were quickly filled. 2014, another 10 were authorized throughout the state. Those were filled. 2017, 5 more were authorized. They were filled. So at the end of December, the governor added another 10. So we are coming to all of the municipalities and offering this as a way to deal with demolition and remediation because the county just cannot afford to keep doing it on behalf of the municipalities. There are 17 municipalities in the county, and if each of them have a problem and want to re-levy it onto the tax bills, the county just can't afford to keep doing that. We've had some major bills in the last couple of years that have just kind of forced this issue. And, you know, it's our hope that this helps solve that problem. So what the land bank can do is demolition remediation in the long term. I know you guys like to plan. You know, if that ever becomes a problem anymore, it can also be used for open space, green space, affordable housing, senior housing, and economic development. So that would be the kind of long-term reach for this. A land bank is its own entity, it's a 501c3. Only foreclosing government units can set them up. So in our area, that would only mean the county and the city. The county and city can come together and we can all be in one boat, or they can do what they want and the county can still offer this to all the other municipalities.
So no towns can do that?
No. So the way we are envisioning this is the county has the charge of creating the bylaws and putting up who the directors would be. The point was brought up the other night that the town certainly should have say in what those bylaws are. The nice thing about the land banks is the state doesn't dictate what the bylaws are. They want it to be a local decision. So I agree with that, and I do believe that, you know, whether it's a subcommittee of the Supervisors Association, however that works out, but I do agree that the municipality should have some say in the formation of the bylaws. Not my decision, though. How it's envisioned, what I have given you is the Albany County Land Bank bylaws. Obviously, Albany County is much bigger than we are, but they have one of the best sets of bylaws. I've included in there some of my notes about what, you know, I think some changes would be that would be better suited for us. Maybe some things that don't need to be included. The representation part, we want to make sure that every area is represented. So as we're envisioning it, there could be between 7 and 11 directors on this board. The legislature is charged with choosing those people. But to make sure of the representation, we're looking at right now that the county gets to choose one person as their representative. And if the city and town decide to join in, they each would get a seat. Because even though all of the municipalities would be paying in the same percentage, you guys would be paying the most. So it makes sense that you have a seat at the table. The other municipalities would be more in regions, like the legislature is set up. So Blackbrook and Sable, for example, could be a region. And they would each be able to have a representative one at a time. And then at the end of their term, when their term limited out, then the other municipality in that region would get to nominate their person for the legislature to choose. The funding, there's a couple different sources of funding for land banks. One obviously is the AG's office. They're the ones that originally set these up. So when they go out and sue banks for doing bad things, that is where money comes in, and that money is given to the land banks. The land banks can also apply for any normal New York State grant. The CDBG grants that you're all familiar with can be used, and it actually helps when a land bank goes and is partnering with a municipality, that we can show that there is consideration from the municipality as well as the land bank. So we don't want to wait around for every 2 or 3 or 4 years getting a grant. We want to make sure that money is constantly coming in. And so that's where this formula came for every municipality who participates to be paying the same percentage in. The first 2 years to kind of get you used to the amount of money for your budget, as it would be a new item, would be to take a percentage of the sales tax that the county shares with the municipalities. So in the first 2 years, it would be 1/4%. And then in years 3 and forward, it would be 1/2%. The county, for its part, since we foreclose on properties in your municipalities, then we would take a portion of the proceeds from our foreclosure auction and dedicate that as our contribution into the land bank. And the parameters that we've set up is the proceeds of the auction, any amount between $300,000 and $400,000, that would go into the land bank. So last year, for example, the proceeds of the auction were $380,000. So $80,000 would go into the land bank. So this sheet shows, where those totals would be on a yearly basis in years 1 and 2, and years 3 and on. Of course, if everybody participates, I'm sure not everyone's going to participate. So I'm going around and doing these presentations. I've got 8 scheduled. The 2 things that we were asking for first, as kind of the first step in this process, is for all of you to discuss, amongst yourselves, whether you think that this is a good idea and you want to participate. If you like the idea and support the idea, you want to, of course, come in until the bylaws are set. What we're asking is for you to pass a non-binding resolution, just saying that you are supporting the idea of the creation of a land bank, because obviously the legislature needs to know who's interested in doing this. Once that's done, it would then go to creation of bylaws, and then the application is made to the state. The second thing that we need, also on a timely basis, is a list of all of the vacant and zombie properties in the town. These don't have to be ones that are absolutely headed to foreclosure. There are banks that have owned properties in the town of Plattsburgh for 7 years, as my hairdresser can attest, because there's one right next to her house, that the bank is maintaining, but nothing's happening. And we're looking at those properties too. The land bank doesn't have to just buy some foreclosed properties. They can actually buy properties from anyone that chooses to. They are not in the place of doing eminent domain. They're not going to force anybody to sell them a home or a piece of property. But they also have some superpowers that we don't have as a government. So for example, in our foreclosure process, every year we get 10 to 15 properties that don't sell for the back taxes owed. We don't have a minimum per se, but if you have a home that owes $5,000 in back taxes and somebody only bids $200, that sale actually has to be approved by the legislature. And so a lot of these properties that get minimal bids are from investors who are from out of the area and they have never seen the property. They watch a show about flipping properties and think that they can just come in and make a killing. We have seen those properties come back in subsequent years. There are properties every 2 or 3 years that head into our foreclosure process. So one of the things that the land bank can do that we can't is if somebody has that low bid of $200, let's say, and the land bank believes that it can rehabilitate that property, it can come in and bid at 201. The legislature can approve that sale. And then they can actually vet who buys that property. They can, if you want to have a first-time homebuyer program, they can, use that. If Michael came in as an investor from outside of the area and he said, I want to bid $1,000 on that, they would actually say, okay, show us that you've had experience in doing this, show us your financials to prove that you actually have the money to do this. And if they don't, then they get passed along. They don't have to take the highest bid, they kind of need to take the best responsible bid. So that's one way that they can do things that we can't. They also can hold properties for a longer period of time. As the county, anytime we foreclose on a property and we don't use it for a municipal purpose in 3 years, we have to start paying taxes. So if they have these 2 pieces of land and they think this one's going to come up for foreclosure or they're going to be able to buy it, they can hold on to these and not develop them because having all 3 of them is going to make a better use of parcel for future development. So I'm trying to give you all of this in a nutshell so that you can ask questions, but that is basically what we're looking at.
Questions from the council, and I'm actually going to allow for Debbie, and so I'm assuming that you may be here part of the taxpayers group, if not, but I asked Debbie to have some conversations with her colleagues with that group, so it'd be interesting if you have any questions, Debbie, but we'll do around the table first, okay? Any questions that you folks might have?
Well, today we just heard what good shape that the county was in, and that they were doing very well. This says they can't afford this anymore, but the money comes out of the sales tax, which they don't even give us the same percentage of sales tax when they reach a certain amount. They cut it down, and not just us, it's the city and it's the other towns as well. I mean, it seems to me that they're just passing on the buck to us as the state passes on the buck to them and to us. And we're getting caught with unfunded mandates. That's the way I see it. Now, we put money into this. It's going to take quite a while to get enough money to do anything, and there's all these other entities that are going to be doing it. And it's the county that has all the money. And they control how much we get through sales tax. Now they're saying, I was here, he said this morning when I asked him the question, he said, well, we don't have to give you anything. No, they don't. But it's another layer of government that's spending a lot of money, and I understand some of it's mandates and some of it's not. But in this case, it just seems like, okay, they're doing fine, but it's not being spread around. And here we are in a position of having to take over another thing that the county did. So how do you answer that in terms of?
So yes, and we certainly don't want to, we want to be as diplomatic as possible, but yes, I mean, we do all have to realize that there are plenty of counties out there who do not share their sales tax. And as I actually had a conversation with Meg this morning after that conversation, is, if we're going to share more of our taxes, then either we as a county have to cut services or we have to raise taxes. So 6 of one or half a dozen of another. We do things for your behalf that we don't ask you for money for. In the past, when they've done emergency services radios, the towns had to pay in. You didn't have to pay in this last time. You got all brand new radios and you didn't have to pay anything for them. The county paid for that for you. So there are services that the county provides to the municipalities. So yes, we have, we're in good financial shape, but as Jim knows certainly from being our attorney, some of those funds that we have are reserved, or they're structured in a way that we can't use them except for the purpose that they are assigned to. The other issue is, because of the airport, in the last 2 years, our fiscal stress score has gotten worse because we're laying out money, yes, we know we're gonna get it back. The county is in good shape, but it's not that we're flush with cash that we're just saying, oh, we're gonna pass something out to you. And we're also sharing in the payment of doing this. We're taking, proceeds from the auction and putting that into this. When you look at the amount of money that we lose on those years when we have to take care of, the demolitions in towns such as the town of Plattsburgh, like we did in 2017, with a house fire, we had to pay for that. We had to make it whole. And if it was one town at a time, that would be okay, but it's not. In that year, we had 5 properties that we had to make towns whole on, and we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. We can't do that on an ongoing basis. So if it was once in a while, fine, but it's not once in a while. There's the building in Moores, that was a funeral home that fell down, that cost us $155,000. So we don't want to say, okay, we're not going to take your property, Moores, you're stuck with a $155,000 bill, you figure it out. We're trying to come up with a solution to the problem, saying, you pay a little bit, we'll pay a bit, we're going to all pool our money to work on it.
But you get all the, when you auction off these properties, you have all the money, you have all that, and most of them are, they pay the taxes plus,
We have lost money.
and then you end up with it. You have lost money on some properties, yes, but you end up most of the time with more after the taxes are paid, and you have the right to the land too. So why couldn't that be used to pay for this demolitions and things?
All the proceeds, because then again, if this was a brand new thing, that would be fine, but this is something that's already budgeted into the county's budget. So let's say, okay, we take all of these properties and we give them to a land bank, and that way you are, reaping the benefits, and what you sell them for goes into that. We already budget $300,000 for the auction. So all of a sudden, if we don't have that money, again, you cut services or you have to raise taxes. It's not just that that 300,000 isn't accounted for, it is.
But you're looking at all of the towns having to raise taxes, and we have a strict 2% thing, plus it's not really 2%, sometimes it's 0.7%. We can't even increase to pay the extra fees for the medical and the personnel and stuff, which we should.
We're all in that same boat.
Well, I understand, but, this is where I'm coming from in terms of this. It just seems to me that the county has more latitude than we do. And the other thing is, as you're speaking of the airport, we provide infrastructure for this area, and the infrastructure in that base wasn't any good, or it certainly was totally deteriorated, and there's still other parts of it. We've renovated some, but we still have a lot to go, and that costs quite a bit if you look at our capital plans and stuff. So here is the county coming and saying, now you're going to pay for any of these houses. It just seems to me that it's too much money.
Let's just be clear, this is optional, you don't have to do it. But on the flip side, as I said, there's been demolition that we've done in the town of Plattsburgh. The law says that I don't have to foreclose on a property that's going to have significant financial liability to the county. So if we don't come to a mutual conclusion or solution here, then if something comes up like in the town of Moores or in the village of Champlain, which is what happened last year that kind of brought this to a head, I'm trying to give something where we're all coming together instead of saying, no, you have to deal with a $155,000 bill yourself.
And did you say previously that we could say that we might be interested, but we didn't have to join?
Right, it would be a non-binding resolution.
So not.
One of the thoughts that was floated out there, right, Kimberly, was the fact, though, should a municipality, not just the town of Plattsburgh, but any municipality, opt not to join as, say, quote-unquote, charter members, that if they were to join in year 3, that there may be a provision that requires them to pay in 3 years' worth of what they would have been paying for their dues, their contributions, however you want to kind of categorize it in the bylaws, for them to become a participant, though. Correct?
Right.
So like for us, it'd be $52,000.
Well, I'm bringing that up. I'm just bringing that for clarity, though, so it's not oh, well, we may not do it, and then we'll just get it in year 3. I want to kind of spread it around for other questions, other,
Well, there isn't, and I want to hit the provision on the other side. We
Yep.
also don't want people coming in, and let's say Town of Plattsburgh gets a project chosen first. That in year 1, you're paying in $9,400. We do some project that's $155,000, we'll take the Moore's example, and then the next year you say, okay, we're out of here, bye. We can't, the land bank can't afford to do that either. So the other kind of caveat is that, if you are in and a project is done in your area, then in essence, you have to stay in until a certain percentage of that project has been paid. That would be in the bylaws. So for example, whether it's 10%, a quarter, whatever that comes out to. The other provision that we're looking at putting in there is to make sure that at some point, as other land banks have been successful, the land bank is flush with cash, that there be a cap in there, whether it's 5 million, 8 million, whatever the number is, that if they ever hit that number, then no municipality pays in the next year, or until that goes down below whatever the threshold is. So again, we're trying to make this the best that we can for everybody. And is this going to fix everything? No, it's not. But it's something that, we can all work on together to deal with the situation.
Kimberly, you feel that this is the sole funding source for this land bank?
I am looking at other, what other land banks are doing. Some of them are, just sitting there waiting for the next grant. But looking back at, the last 5 years and how many projects or demolitions there have needed to be done, I just felt that there needed to be a constant and consistent source of money coming into the land bank to make it successful. So it took...
Put us in a better position to get those grants?
Right, and that's one of the things that Mr. Zarenko had said last week or 2 weeks, whenever it was, is that, if they can apply for something and they're showing that the municipality is, kind of being the partner and funding it, they're much more likely to actually get approved. So yes, I am looking at, obviously, there's been a lot of research to get to this point, and while all of you are having conversations, like I said, I'm continuing to look at all of the other land banks, what their structures are, what their financing is, because we want to take the best of everybody else. There is in New York State a Land Bank Alliance, and they are very helpful with each other. They're very open and transparent because they don't want other communities to come in and reinvent the wheel. So they have been very helpful in sharing their information with us.
Kimberly, what would be a typical geographic area that a land bank would cover?
Well, it covers either its own entity, so in Clinton County, it would be Clinton County. Different entities can join together. So for example, there are 2 in New York State that are bigger than a county. There are 3 counties and 6 cities, something like that. But there's the Greater Mohawk Land Bank and the Hudson Valley Land Bank. So they can, in a sense, be as big as you want them to be. And one of the questions I've gotten is, well, what about doing a Clinton Essex Franklin land bank? The issue I see there is, as I've come through this process, trying to convince 17 municipalities to all come in and join together. Now what is it going to be like if we have 80 municipalities?
Yeah.
How do we decide then whose projects get to work first, although we'd have more money?
Right.
2 other points is, Essex County has Lake Placid, which is an outlier. Imagine what it would cost to have to do a project in Lake Placid, very expensive. Another thing is that looking at the backlog of issues that Essex and Franklin County have had with their foreclosures, makes me a little cautious of doing that too. But I think the scale of it, because our county is 1,000 square miles, I think that's plenty of room.
Kimberly, in your research so far, what do you believe is kind of the minimum amount that we really need in the coffers to achieve some type of remedy to some of the situations that are going on? You've set forth a schedule and it talks about generating funds, but some of the kind of black eyes and troubled properties that people are going to be jockeying to do. I mean, do you have a sense for Because you don't want everyone to throw your cash in, right? And then it deplete, and then throw yours, and then deplete. So do you have a sense for that at all?
Well, the issue is, we don't know, and this is what I'm in conversations right now with, is what kind of seed money we would get to start. You know, it makes a difference if, you know, the state says, okay, great, here's 100,000, or if they say, okay, great, here's 800,000. Very different numbers. And one of the questions has been about staff. Well, in the beginning, the only thing that, you know, I can see happening is having one, you know, person, the executive director, who is, you know, responsible for running this. Now, shared services, is that somebody, you know, who can be doing something else? Is it that, okay, this person understands what we're trying to do and understands what this job is, and maybe have a graduated salary for them that, you know, every year they get an additional 5,000, so they're gonna start really low, but eventually they'll get to what their permanent salary is. Those are the types of details I'm looking at right now with the various different land banks of counties of our size. So it's, I know what you're asking, it's a hard question to ask. I think it has to be a balance of, you know, if we're doing a demolition, we're not gonna make any money on that. You know, you're gonna sell the half acre or whatever, you know, for $1,000. We've got to have a combination of doing one of those and then taking, you know, one of the low bid foreclosures to rehab it, and that way, you know, selling a property for 50 or 60,000 that they only paid 500 for. So I don't have, you know, that answer at the moment. So.
I expect there's going to be a number of things of you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
But I think there needs to be an acknowledgement of there's still a lot of question marks, and I think that's, I won't even speak directly for this board, but speaking with the other town supervisors, that has been the leading concern of, there's more questions than there are answers right now, so.
And that's the, you know, issue, especially with the bylaws,
Yeah.
is getting a committee together, especially of people who certainly may not have experience in land banks, but have experience in construction and engineering and legal. And as we're going along too, it's coming up with, as boards are asking me questions, coming up with things to add into it. One of those things is, if everyone's going to get guaranteed that they're gonna get a project in, you know, a time span of, you know, let's say the 10 years, if we don't have the money to do that, well then, if you've paid in your 10 years, you're guaranteed a project and you don't have one, then until your project is paid for, or you get your project done, then in the subsequent years, you're not paying anything, you're still in the land bank. But if that, we're trying to come up with those answers to situations because we don't know.
And you're coming up with guidelines also for which properties might be priorities, or how they would be a priority?
Yeah, I'm talking with one of the larger land banks right now, saying, okay, you have 200 municipalities, how do you determine that? Certainly, there's the immediate dangers to life and health, you know, which should be at the beginning, but, you know, what if we have 5 of those? You know, how do we determine? So that's, you know, where I'm at right now
In a small town, one building might be really important for them. I mean,
right. Well, and it would be that every municipality is going to say, okay, here's our, you know, worst property, or the property we need to develop the most, and that will be their one, and then it would be the board of directors to determine that. But there certainly needs to be a metric, so that it's kind of, in a sense, provable of the thought process that went into it.
Can you say a municipality could opt out or not
We
join?
can't mandate that you do this.
So in Clinton County, say one town could not be part of it?
Sure. 5 towns, you know, that I'm not expecting that every town is gonna jump on board. I, you know, met with the city tonight, and they have a very different structure where they thought that this,
Yeah.
you know, was gonna go. You know, they want stuff done in 2 or 3 years. They want the money to go back into the city. Well, I'm sure every municipality does. This doesn't work that way. You know, if we're going to, you know, do it, we all have to contribute, and we all have to get the spoils of that.
Yeah. How does it work in, say, there must be counties where maybe half the towns have joined and half have not, or?
Well, again, this funding model is what I came up with.
Yeah.
This isn't how it works in everything else, and like I said, that's what, you know, trying to do this on top of my regular work. So every day I look at a subject that has come up in these types of conversations. Okay, I'm going to call, this land bank to have that conversation. So that's on there.
We've heard from the Albany County Land Bank, obviously with the presentation last week. We've heard the county's take on it, from you and the legislators that were there. What I would really be interested in is hearing from the municipalities that fall under some of these land banks. I would like to talk to some of the folks that similar size and scope as the town of Plattsburgh and find out what life was like before the land bank and what life is like after the land bank. Did it work for them? Didn't it work for them? And when I say speak to them, I don't mean just from a board perspective. I'd like to see our codes folks talking to the folks from those towns, the planning folks, so that we can get down into the roots and find out, did this work for them, did it not work for them? And as I understood it from Albany County, the municipalities did not do any kick-in for the seed at all, correct? The seed came from the county, if I remember correctly.
Well, the structure that they used is kind of what, Tom was talking about, is they actually have gotten rid of their foreclosure auction. And, they basically take all the properties, so they take the good ones and the bad ones. Again, trying to do what is best for everyone and also what's going to work. In my time as treasurer, I have a hard time believing that our legislature would forego the auction, simply for the fact that I said it's part of our budget. That money is part of our budget. So if we get rid of that, you cut services or you raise taxes. So it's trying to, come up with how this is best going to work for us.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to the fee schedule completely, but I want to find out, is this going to be money that's going to be well spent for the town of Plattsburgh? And that's where I think if we can get a list of several municipalities that participate, that we can reach out to and communicate and find out, did it work for them, did it not work for them? That's what I'd really like to know.
Or municipalities that left their respective land banks too.
Well,
How come the state does them in 10 clumps?
I think the original 10 was just, it was a new idea and they wanted to see if it was going to work. When those 10 filled up and, 3 years went by that they had, enough data that to say, okay, this has been successful. I have no idea why they chose 10 again, maybe just because that was the number they started.
Why is there a restriction at all? Why can't it just
I don't
be
understand that
just
either.
done?
I've asked that question, I've never gotten that answer.
What's the benefit to the state to have these?
I think it's, improving the physicalness of the, when we talk about economic development, we talk about tourism. When a couple of years ago, Michael and I were in Lake Placid, and they had all these experts about, economic development and tourism. And afterward, I went to Jeff Farrell and I said, this is all great, but how are we going to get somebody to Shazy Lake and or invest in Dannemora when you've got those 2 horrible yellow buildings in Dannemora? How are we going to get someone to come in to an area that has all these unfilled storefronts? So, that's also where the conversation came. But I've asked the question about why are they limiting it, and I don't know. I've never gotten that answer.
Just, I think one zombie house can poison a whole area.
Absolutely. I mean, Adam gave, statistics on the increase of crime in an area where there's vacant or zombie, the property values that decrease. There's lots of reasons why the zombie and vacant buildings are a blight.
Can a land bank be an active bidder in foreclosure?
Yeah, they can.
They can.
Take the state, as far as what they're doing, they've lessened the amount that used to go to municipalities, went to all municipalities, small and large. They had a certain amount. They kept reducing that so they wouldn't have to raise taxes in Albany. This is another instance where we're going to have to raise taxes, and Albany gets away with it. It just seems to me, because they could provide money. Right now, in what I read in the paper, we might lose $92,000 under the governor's proposal. I realize that might be a negotiating point, but the point is, he's trying to reduce the amount of money that goes to the towns, the villages. He's wanting to put everything under the county. That's the way it is. I personally feel that towns are the closest to the people, that people have a chance to talk with us, complain to us, come in and protest, and run for office in the towns. And it's not so much in the county, because you don't even know sometimes what is going on unless you can go to all their committee meetings. Because if you just go to their regular meeting, they just vote on things. And you don't know what they are. I really feel that the state is and this governor, I think, is really, this what's done it. They've reduced the amount of money that comes to the municipalities. And it's just putting more burden on us, and this is another one, in my opinion.
Steve, Debbie, Vincent, I want to be inclusive in this conversation.
So mine is obviously on behalf of the town. I'll start this conversation off with Mr. Coffey. We forward you Lori Mifflin Association of Towns. I'm sure you're aware of it.
Monroe County, very aware of it.
Monroe County. So Monroe
being
County
appealed.
is right now, it's going in front of the Supreme Court. 2 justices, maybe 3 are voting on. What they decided to do is, we've always been able to take up, clean up properties, demolish them. We'd go down, we would sit with Pat. We initially take, the town would take whatever it was, 150. We did one all the way from a hotel in 2004 across from Stewart's, I can't remember the name of it. Cumberland took it down, we got made whole. Last year that was said, stop, don't do this anymore because we're not going to be made whole. Monroe County is taking to task the ability that counties cannot do that. So there's a lawsuit, and whether you're on what side it is, and we forwarded you that and said, hey, we're watching this very carefully. Because they could go back to the county can't do what they're doing. It may be illegal and they will have to do this. I would first say, let's watch that very carefully and how that case plays out. This land bank, if that's the case, that the county can't do that, why would we go into the land bank that we're always going to be made whole?
I can answer that question.
I'm speaking to these guys, and just say, we wouldn't want to do that if now what we're doing, because you pay us to do our job. You pay me to go out there to take care of these properties, to take care of the hotels, and we do it very proficiently, and we don't have, Dannemora is one of the worst examples. Those yellow buildings sitting into there, it's one of the worst blights. They've never taken to say, you either clean it up or we're tearing it down. Where we don't let that. Yes, we have zombie properties. We got probably 5 that I know of that we watch. And your letter that went out said, please provide us with any properties that we have so then you guys can have a general number over there. So watching that Monroe County case very carefully, I think, is a due diligence between Matt Favreau and Mr. Coffey. One, to see how that one plays out. Because that's going to be case law throughout New York State. And Tom, that would also go back, then the counties would have to go back to the state and say, well, this was a state mandate, statute, however they're going to play that out. I don't know. That's for Mr. Coffey to find out. Because then they could go back to the state and say, well, now this is our mandate, you pay us, and then they could sue each other. Who knows how that's going to go out. Let's just watch that one.
Can I comment real quick before,
Yeah.
just because it's on that? So and I've talked to some people over in Monroe County on how they're going to be appealing this. You know, one of the issues that I've seen is in the last 2 years, I believe, in the Senate, bills were introduced to basically mandate this. And the argument is, why would they introduce a bill if it was already law? So on the flip side, why would you join a land bank if the counties were going to have to do it? It goes back to the provision in real property tax law that says we don't have to foreclose on a property that's going to be a significant financial burden. So you take that property in Moore's, $155,000 cleanup. We don't have to foreclose on that. So what happens? Let's say Moore's had taken it down, we made them whole. It comes for foreclosure, we refuse to take it, the town is charged back. So it's just a money transfer back and forth. It actually would end up back on the municipality. So that's kind of, again, why, you know, this can be a solution for that, because we don't have to take those properties, we do not have to foreclose on them. So even if they win that doesn't change that section of real property tax law. It changes that you can re-levy, and we have to make you whole but in the end, we don't have to take that property.
And that's for
Yeah.
politicians to figure out, not for us, but that's another here and there for you guys, for questions to, and maybe for you to help answer some of these, because they're gonna come, is a place like Dannemora, Schuyler Falls, the ones that do not have, my opinion, strong code officers, they've been letting those go. If you go Dannemora alone, they're probably $1.5 million, $1.8 million by the time you take down those buildings, asbestos, the whole deal. We would never even come close to that in the town of Plattsburgh. So the ability, yes, if you got an 800,000, $1.5 million, if you had 10 million in bank, great. But Schuyler Falls alone, when you go through there, they have 15 to maybe 30 that are visible from the road that they haven't done. Dannemora's got another, we've seen the Dannemora ones. Altona, how many, 20, 30 of those? So the distribution of the funds, when it's almost the squeaky wheel gets the oil process on some of these land banks. So Albany County, talked to a couple code officers down there, it comes down to which one of the councilmen from which municipality goes there and just hammers and hammers and hammers away. Town of Plattsburgh, if we have 5 and it's a zombie property, the home's still stable, we would have to go dollars and cents to Pat and say, Pat, if we have these 5 homes that haven't been turned over, what is our liability compared to Dannemora? They're millions. So, you know, if you did 1, 2, 3 a year, my opinion, it's been lax around here with outlying municipalities. I can see, I was at fault with the Keysville one, of working with the supervisor, I cannot remember her name.
Sandy Senecal.
Sandy, of trying to work her through the process of getting that down. It was an IDLH, immediate danger to life and health, it was about to collapse onto the neighbor. That was a blight and a liability to the town. So I could see those getting taken care of way before your hair cutters that just has high grass. So for the town, of how much we would pay into how much we would actually get out. So to me, we'd have to do a real analysis to say we got 5.
Yeah.
How much, if we're gonna pay 30,000, 60,000 each year, when do we ever get that out? So
On the flip side though, if you were talking about you had a hotel, what if one of your hotels goes and it's $1 million to demolish it? And I've had that conversation with Rick Potiker, you know, he said, oh, well, we only have one really bad property, why do we need to do this? And I said, well, okay, you don't have the funeral home in Moores, but, you know, when we've had to do with, you know, the fires, there are structures in most municipalities and absolutely in the town of Plattsburgh that if something happened and whoever it was that owned it walked away, would be a significant liability to you.
we have, that would be an opinion, because we have very valuable land where it wouldn't sit vacant. If we had a hotel, Route 3 is very valuable, they wouldn't let it just sit there.
But if you had to demolish it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we demolish it, but then again, the whole levy thing, how that plays out would be very important to these ladies and gentlemen to be able to do that. We've never had one sit there. That hotel was one that was in the outliers, the whole deal. It'd been in foreclosure for years, and insurance claims, there was some shady stuff. But that's what they would have to say. Who would know that we'd even get made at the hotel? Who would know that we would get that money? We wouldn't be guaranteed that after Dannemora takes down 4, that that's not going to deplete it. So even though a scare tactic, you don't know if it would happen, we don't know that we even get the money to take it down. So that's another one, if we only have one voting member on there, you have to consider. Just, I don't want to take up a ton of time, but like the Dannemora one, who in the land banks, do you know who controls the home? Like say if you bid the $501, like who, does the land bank president or CEO, whoever it is, they control it and then they would go out to bid to say
No, it's
Ricky's
the board as a
home repair?
whole. The
Okay.
board of the land bank as a whole
So
makes that decision.
once it goes into there, this is what Albany County, just a quick one, is that then the county, if it's controlled by them, can they put county workers legally on there and not have to pay prevailing wages?
What do you mean? I don't understand. your
Like
question.
say that the issue like you had, that we had in Wallace Hill, where it was the single wide, it was going for foreclosure, so we had to go in there, Al went in there and charged you guys for it. So we didn't have to pay prevailing wages. If we would have had to, if you would have had to put Joe's lawn service out there, then it would have went up to here. But if it's in the land bank, and what you're gonna deal with is huge, as Albany County is they had two places that were riddled with asbestos. So instead of 100,000, it was 500. It's $500,000 to get rid of houses that had the old asbestos shingle siding. But if you could put county workers in there, but it's a question to ask, can you put county workers into one that the land bank
Shared services, yes.
controls?
Yeah.
So then it would take your cost from here, it brings you down to here because county workers there. You would say, all right, not Al, but,
Roscoe.
no,
Oh, yeah, the new guy,
is,
yeah.
Twice.
Dwight, Carl, hey,
Yeah.
can you get 3 dump trucks over there? And
Yes.
it would help the land bank to a damn one. They put their own ones in there to see if legally they can do that.
Yeah, so the shared services, and that was one of the things that was brought up, but not really, actually Michael asked that question in the meeting, is, what else can the county do? So, and to your question, Tom, is, with hauling away debris, for example, not asbestos, if the land bank is doing demolition, the county can allow them to dump as part of the arrangement that they have with Casella towards the county's total, and so the land bank wouldn't be charged.
Even though it's a nonprofit organization separate from the county?
Well, this is what I was told. I will double check.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of one of my concerns is, when does it become the tentacles of the county? I understand to get it chartered, but then when does it break apart from the county and no longer kind of,
It could be like a subcontractor.
yeah.
So, for example, some of the other things that we're talking about is obviously, recording fees, using, county bulldozers or whatever is allowed. When Adam and I were speaking about that, he said, oh yeah, there's a lot of things that the county does on our behalf, so we don't have to pay for them. So yes, that would be.
It makes a land bank more feasible, in my opinion, again, not running numbers, and that goes down to like question 4, is if you can put county employees, or when you say shared services, all right, town of Dannemora, you guys have neglected this, I want you guys to put your highway department, your buildings and maintenance guys onto there to absorb some of these costs so the land bank doesn't get drawn down. But let's schedule this, where you have a schedule and it would be a little more feasible.
Right.
If that's like what Michael said, if it's a 503B non-for-profit and putting county or town workers on a non-for-profit property, that's another lawyer question, if you can even legally do that. I don't know how Albany County, they have 2 guys down there that I've reached out and they didn't have the answers to that. 2, do you have the numbers of, like, when you asked us for, not only from the assessors, but for the code officers, how many homes do you have in there? Because that would be a great number for these guys to see. If there's 300, I'm just throwing out, there's 350 homes that you know in these 17 counties, you'd look at them and be like, we got 5, there's 355 that are gonna be in front of us. Those are more numbers to say whether it might be a tipping point for them to go.
But it's not who has the most properties, it's every municipality gets a project done. So it
Within
doesn't.
10 years?
Right, so it doesn't matter if you've got 5 and Dannemore's got 300, you're both gonna get one project.
I don't see how the numbers add up if we're gonna contribute.
Because this is only the money that we are all contributing. This is not grant money, this is not money that gets forwarded
Right.
from the AG's office.
I'm just saying.
And there's $30 million 2 months ago that the AG's office released to
Right.
the land banks.
I guess I'm trying to, I don't see how it adds up for the town to contribute nearly $20,000 a year. We only have 5 properties that probably would not cost that over a span of 10 years.
And that goes back to, certainly this would have to be in the bylaws, but when we're talking about demolition and remediation for most towns, it's probably going to be their number 1. If that isn't your concern, there are the other 3 or 4 allowances of land bank money. So if you are looking at, hey, you want to, for your recreation, you want a park, you want to do a senior housing unit, affordable housing unit, all of those are allowable uses of this money. It's just for many municipalities, they're looking for rehabbing of their properties or demolition. That might not be yours, and that is an allowable use.
Yeah, because to Steve's point, and not to be too simplistic, I mean, land banks are probably successful based on large inventories. So for my thinking, it's the law of large numbers. So that's where I understand what Steve is saying in terms of the distribution of these funds. So great information, but that's, like I said,
Well, that's what I said, there has to be that balance of, if you're doing demolition, then kind of your next project needs to be one that's gonna make money. So then you work on rehabbing one of those foreclosure properties so that when you sell it, you're gonna have money that's going back into the land bank. The other thing with a rehab property is demolition, you just have to go and do it. With a rehab property, the land bank can be like any one of us and go to a bank and get a mortgage, and that way you're not paying $50,000, you may only, you're taking out a mortgage, you're taking out a loan.
And two separate, I mean, totally, so like demolition compared to rehab,
Right.
totally.
Very different.
I mean, totally different. We think of demolition because that's the numbers that we see, you know, that, and how does it, a large portion of our re-levy stuff that I see is garbage, trash, you know, like washing machines, the whole deal that we go out there and we take it. Is the land bank also regular maintenance or just for
No, just,
homes?
yeah, it's the, and again, we'll see what Monroe, what that decision is, but what we were talking about is, why should, it's great that you guys have, full-time code enforcement officers, most municipalities can't afford that. But, why should someone in Blackbrook have to pay for a lawn cleaner from Plattsburgh? So it came down to both money and fairness, that, we were looking at what the towns were re-levying. We certainly understand the demolition more, but when it's to property maintenance charges and only a few municipalities, are doing it or doing it at the level that you may have been doing it, it comes down to, that question of fairness. Why should somebody in another municipality pay for the beautification in Plattsburgh?
They do.
It goes down to the same thing, how are you gonna get somebody to Shazy when they drive by the big yellow buildings in Dannemora? So Shazy is,
Buffalo pays for the beautification of Plattsburgh with grant money. It's tax dollars.
and one of the last ones is that if it comes down to that of just Albany County, their biggest one was asbestos. It's huge. It crippled their budget. They would say, all right, it's only, a 35 or 2,200 square foot home. The asbestos triple netted what they were. So they weren't, that's what was eating their land bank up. It was just the asbestos, lead from the pipe, the whole deal. They have a lot more lead pipes and other issues down there that they, it was $1.4 million, that they started with, and they got through 3 projects. And then, all right, it was eating it up quite quickly. So one of their hopes is to try to get somebody either on retainer or having one of their county people be an asbestos abatement and running it that way, but then you have to have an asbestos abatement hauler's license to try to combat some of these astronomical. Right now, lead, asbestos is just through the roof. So that might be something to look into. What Michael's original question is, can we even legally do that for a non-for-profit organization? Because once you started it for one, well, you're doing it for this non-for-profit. Why aren't we doing it here, 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 and here? Those are just some of the questions that I have off that. Maybe help you go forward. And these guys it comes down to dollars and cents. If we put $30,000 in for 3 years, and you can say, Steve, give me $10,000, and we keep the beautification, we keep it in here, and we eat the cost of the garbage, the trash, the whole deal. But I'm very interested in Monroe County first.
Yeah, I was gonna say, any questions?
I just, just for what it's worth, find the conversation kind of a circular reference. I mean, obviously the town, you keep talking about taxes, Tom, but the town doesn't charge any taxes. So if you're getting money from the county and the county's now going back saying you need to give us 1/4% or 0.5%, it just seems like it's just going in and back out again. But secondly, I haven't heard anything about quantifying anything. There's a lot of supposeds and a lot of assumptions, but you haven't quantified, how much money the county has paid for these properties. I don't know what you guys do with the budget from the auctions to say, does that go into a restricted fund that it would just be used for these types of purposes, or are you using it in your general fund? So therefore, you keep saying we don't have any money as a county. As a taxpayer, it doesn't really matter to me what happens, because I'm gonna be taxed the same, whether it's coming pseudo through the town or through the county. So I don't see from a town perspective that there'd be any advantage as a taxpayer or not. But it just seems like there is no quantifying a lot of what Steve's saying as to how many properties are in the town or in the county. And where, you know, how much auction money have you taken in? How much have you spent over the last 10 years? What is the historical data to support that a land bank is even necessary? Not to mention that I don't see what the structure of the land bank really is at this point. It's not a county organization, so what kind of organization
It's a
is it?
501c3.
But what does that mean? Is it just, oh, it's a nonprofit, but who's sanctioning? Because we're talking about using all kinds of municipal resources and human resources from doing the demolitions and doing all these other things, but it has no connection to the county. And then, so what does that do for anybody other than just give 5, 6, 7 more people a salary? So what's the administrative expense as a percentage of the whole bank? And you're giving it a very subjective authority. So, you know, it seems to be just wrought with, there's gonna be somebody in there that's gonna get something more than somebody else. And not to mention, because it's nonprofit, every time it goes out for a bid, chances are you're gonna pay twice as much as what a normal investor would go in and buy a piece of property and try to get something done, whether it's a asbestos abatement or something else. It seems like municipalities are gonna get charged the highest amount to take care of things that the average person is probably gonna shop around and do the best he can. And it just sounds like it would be riddled with a lot of potential for mismanagement of funds and just subjective decisions as to who gets what money, what properties get torn down. And if you're in the rehab business and then mortgaging, how does that work when all you're gonna do is just saddle the agency with a bunch of debt at the end of the day that the municipalities are paying into to pay the mortgage on something that's going on for however number of years it's gonna take to pay off that mortgage. And then secondly, if you're going to these auctions and there's all these properties and somebody is a low bid at $200 and the county's owed $5,000 in taxes, you're saying that the organization would have the authority to go in and bid 201. Well, if the average person, such as myself, is going out there looking at investment property and I don't think it's worth more than 200, what makes the organization think, well, if we buy it for 201, we're really gonna make this thing viable? If it's in Altona, I'm not interested. If it's in Dannemora, I may not be interested. But yet, if there's enough of a market to say they're not interested, why would you have this organization use municipal money at the end of the day that you're funneling into a nonprofit, but really it's not a municipal organization, it's just a nonprofit, but you're using taxpayers' money to fund it, to make the decision that, yeah, we're gonna buy that property in Altona for $201 because we're gonna re-beautify it and really build it up, and all of a sudden now the organization becomes the marketing expert as to what happens with real estate in our towns and in our county. It just doesn't make sense to me. And if that's the case, why don't you just go and bid on these properties to begin with?
All right,
And
you've
is
got
the-
35 questions in there, so I
Well,
can
and this
answer
is all
one or
because,
two. Right.
you know, this is common. You can go back, I guess, and listen to the video or something, but those are just a lot of things that, to put out this idea and not have thought all this thing through, just seems like a
Well, so it
back
has,
way of trying to get it started without having
half of
any
the
answers.
people have been to a much fuller presentation that I gave 2 weeks ago. So to some of your questions, the quantifying of the properties, that is why, you know, of the first 2 things I asked from each municipality is, please let us know how many abandoned and zombie properties you have.
Right.
Because that is a question, you know, that's the question number 1. Is this as big of a problem as, you know, as we may
So did
think?
you present how much the county pays in these zombie properties on an annual basis?
No,
At
I
that
have-
last meeting?
No, I have numbers from specific years, but again, let me answer one question before you hit me with another one. So that's one of the things we need to do. We had, you know, the city of Plattsburgh said, you know, when they were asked at the meeting, how many properties do you have? 4. Okay, fine. 2 days later, get an email, okay, we've looked, we've got 15. Well, if you know, extrapolate that to all the other municipalities, if you think you've got 10 and you have 50, you multiply that times 17 municipalities, then there's a problem. You know, if there is only, let's say, 3 in each municipality, then this doesn't need to go anywhere. So that's why we are trying to quantify this with going out to the assessors and code enforcement officers and asking for a list to make sure that, this is a necessity. As far as the auction with the $200, there's some issues with the auctions. Yes, you may not want to bid on it as, a realtor, broker, you own your firm, but if the assessment of a property is $60,000 and the best bid we're getting is $200, we have to ask why. So yeah, it might not be in a great location. The other thing is when they're at auction, they're quitclaim deeds. They're not warranty deeds, so people can't go and get a mortgage on them. So again, if the land bank comes in and can hold it for those 2 years and, go and be able to then get a mortgage because now there's going to be, whether it's a warranty deed. It's trying to come up with a solution. If there is not a problem, then we don't go forward.
Right,
But
but I
we're
mean-
taking a look at what all of the other land banks are doing, how they were set up,
But
how
as
they're
a
getting
county,
funded.
you would know already the entire amount of need for that if you're saying you're already paying for that through the county, and now you're just looking to spread that burden from the county to the different townships. So to go and ask the towns, I mean, don't you already know as a county how much money is spent on zombie properties in the last, or zombie properties in the last
The only ones
10
that
years, or-
we have to deal with are the ones that are re-levied and that we made whole. So for example, in 2017, we lost $300,000 on 5 properties, one of them being in the town of Plattsburgh.
Right.
So, we lost that, and then also didn't have the proceeds from the auction. So it was a
You
double
lost it
whammy
how?
because we had to make the towns whole.
Okay.
So, I don't remember which one it was, but it was either $18,000 or $35,000 that the town did in demolition.
Right.
We had to make them whole. Multiply that by, the amount of municipalities that we do that for. But it's also, what is it costing you as a realtor, as the neighborhood where you have a zombie property that, the neighbors' property levels are dropping? Or, are kids in the neighborhood throwing rocks, and causing damage to the property, and then that's going to become a problem. So it's multi-level. It's not just what are the county's issues with, foreclosure or making the towns whole. It's a systemic problem of not being able to get money to deal with these problems with demolition. Everyone, complains about the yellow buildings in Dannemora.
But the only way you acquire those properties is if the property owner lets go of it. You're talking about all these zombie properties, but if they're not on the foreclosure list, somebody's paying already, still the taxes, the assessed value is still being made into the tax roll. So I don't understand how the land bank changes that.
The land bank doesn't have to just buy foreclosed properties. If there's somebody who owns a property and for whatever reason is paying the taxes, there's no reason that they, as anyone else, can just call them up and say, hey, look, we're interested in this, do you want to sell it to us? For whatever reason, they're not going to a realtor, I don't know. But yes, this is why we're having these conversations to, get everyone's feedback and get more, answers to questions for everybody. I'm not an expert on land banks. I was asked to come up with a solution to a problem, and that's what we're trying to do. So, no, we don't have all the answers. So that's why we're looking at the other land banks in New York State to see what they're doing, how they are handling these situations, and coming back and making, the bylaws as complete as we can be. It is, in a sense, even though it's a 501c3, there is some kind of pseudo-governmental because the land banks are overseen by New York State. It's not like they can go rogue. They have to be transparent. They have to report to the state. So I will, get whatever rules of conduct that they have to abide by. But they can't just go and decide and spend money any way that they want to. Again, we're not going to be as big as Albany and need 6 staff. As I said, in the beginning, it looks like, from what we've talked about, we'll have 1 employee at the most. If it gets bigger, then when it can be afforded and justified, then you have more employees. But this isn't just going to be, I'm going to form a land bank to give people jobs. that's not the purpose here.
With that said, I think that in generally is a good summary from the standpoint of, I think there was an acknowledgement by everyone, there are still a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And there's still a lot of questions that need to be asked. So I know that the Supervisors Association is having some general conversations. Let me just, one more statement, then I will go to you, Debbie. My question to you, not a statement, but my question to you, Kimberly, is currently of the 17 municipalities in Clinton County right now, who out of any of them has stepped forward and said, we're in?
Village of Champlain, Village of Danmore.
Okay, Debbie.
I just hear, I realize that it's early, supposedly, but I just hear it's a lot of churning of taxpayers' dollars. Churning, we're the county. No, you're taking taxpayers' dollars, be it sales tax dollars or whatever, and you're gonna ask, and you're gonna give the sales tax dollars to the town of Plattsburgh, who funds our general fund sales tax dollars completely. Then, you're gonna ask them to give back the money to you, which means...
1%, and 1.5%.
I don't care, it's $18,000. Now they're gonna have to redo their budget. They may have to lose another $92,000, I don't know, depending on what the governor does. But nevertheless, gonna have to look at their budget, $18,000 every year, maybe more, who knows? It depends on how the sales tax. Steve told us today, they're pounding at the doors to get in here, commercial, did you not? So, let's hope that generates more sales tax money. Meantime, as soon as the town of Plattsburgh reduces their general fund, then they turn around and charge more to the highway department because they can afford to give the highway department fewer dollars. So taxpayers see their taxes increase, and because government has no money, the whole program, whether it's a grant, a state grant, which asks Buffalo to pay for the beautification of Plattsburgh, or the county money, it all coming out of our pockets, and it's being turned around and turned around and turned around, and nobody's talking about that. I find that offensive, quite frankly.
I'm sorry you find that offensive, but state and local government, or even the federal government, it is a shell game, absolutely. I get that.
And this is just another scheme to move the money,
I find that
monies
offensive.
around.
We're trying to come up with a solution. As, we don't want to get to this us versus them, and that's where I feel, this is coming from.
Well, that's what it sounded like.
But again, as Harry said this morning, we share our sales tax with you. There are plenty of counties that don't do that. We're trying to come up with something where we don't have to say, as in the case of Moore's, with $155,000, sorry, we're not going to make you whole and we're not going to foreclose on the property. You have to deal with that problem. So
But in so doing, just backing up, when you're talking about, it's only 0.25%, whatever you're taking from municipalities, why doesn't the county just do that now through the funds that are there and earmark it for that?
The funds that are where?
Wherever you're getting them, whether it's the sales tax or whether it's the foreclosures. Why, the solution of creating this new entity with new stuff, it seems like, well, if it's a county issue, because that's what I'm assuming, you say you're looking for a solution, it's not a solution to the towns as much as it would be the county who is now charged with spending the money for these things. Is that not correct? Is the problem currently with the county that you're saying that you don't have the funds to do those types of things, and so now you're looking for a solution to fix the county's problem? Is that correct?
Yes and no. It's the fact that as far as the research I've done, we're only two or three counties that I've researched that have made their towns whole. Most counties actually have legislation that they will not do beautification, they will not do demolition.
Right.
So it's the issue that because there are fires every year where there's demolition that's required, that we can't keep writing checks for $300,000 one year, $150,000 next year, $500,000. Again, we might be in a good financial situation compared to other municipalities, but that doesn't mean that all of our money, if you look at it, isn't in reserves one way or the other as they are in any municipality. So what we're saying is we can't be an open checkbook for the towns to say you need to pay for our garbage removal, or you need to pay for our lawn mowing, or you need to pay for our demolition. we can't continue to do that.
So the option could be that either one, you set aside the monies through your own legislation, or two, just pass a bylaw to say you're no longer going to reimburse the towns, and then see if it's still an issue down the road? Is that an option that somebody's looked at or not?
Well, when you say, where's this money coming from that you're
Well,
suggesting
your
that we
budget,
could
I mean,
problem?
whether it's foreclosed.
So, okay, so then we raise our taxes, which is gonna raise your taxes anyway,
Well, it's
so-
gonna happen one way or the other, is what I'm saying, but the second option would be changing the bylaws of the county, saying you don't make the towns whole, and then find out if the towns either do or don't fix their own properties and see if there's a problem to the municipalities. But right now, I don't hear that there's a problem with the municipalities, it's the problem with the county, which we're still paying for it, no matter how it shakes out. The taxpayers, all of us as taxpayers, are gonna continue to pay for it. If the money's coming in through sales tax, it doesn't affect me, but it's gonna somehow come back to me through my property taxes. But there are still other solutions the county could come up with that doesn't go into one municipality having to fund things for another municipality.
I invite you to help us do that.
Well, I'm just asking if somebody's looked at those
This
other
is the
options, that's
only
all.
solution that was come up with. Every legislator was asked to come up with a solution to this issue.
Yeah, I'm going to. So, thank you. You know, and part of the reason that we engage at this level is because, honestly, often some of the other municipalities go the way that the town of Plattsburgh goes. And a lot of people have been asking us, you know, what are we thinking? And I think every one of the members around here at the table have been asking a lot of questions. Thank you to Steve for sticking around. I know you weren't planning on that. Thank you for folks for voicing your opinions and thoughts. And I would encourage you to talk to your legislators as well. I mean, the town of Plattsburgh has 3 county legislators that are going to be part of this process for the potential chartering. And thank you to Kimberly, because I know that it's one of those things where when you're making a presentation, it's the feeling of the hot seat, but, you know, there are other counties that are doing this. And from my opinion, I'd rather explore an option. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to sign my name on the dotted line behind it, but I do want more information. So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Just one quick clarification. The legislators may be the ones like guiding the charter of this, but it's up to the towns whether they're going to join or not.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
if nobody wants to join, the legislators really don't have anything to do with it.
Well, I mean, to start it, yes, and they could set forth the bylaws, but yes, I mean, it would be a non-starter if no one joins, at least you would think.
So you've already gotten 2, right?
We have two municipalities who are on board.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Kimberly.
you, folks.
Thanks,
Kimberly.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. We have 2 items before us this evening. Resolution 30, the abstract.
Michael, there are 2 resolution 30s. There are 2 resolution 30s. You're doing the
Result
abstract?
of the abstract of audit of claims number 1C-19, 3556 for $24,170.08. Abstract 1C-19, 13 through 25 prepays in the amount of $754,003.71. And abstract number 1C-18, 2879 to 2904 for $22,646.69. And prepays 495 to 503 for the amount of $33,647.29. Be received as reviewed by the audit committee, and the supervisors hereby authorized to pay said abstract.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Hebert.
Second.
Wood. Any discussion? Seeing none. Roll call.
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Meg LaFave?
Yes.
Barb Hebert?
Yes.
Charles Costick?
Yes.
Mike Cash?
Yes, resolution carries. The other resolution to bring forward this evening is Resolution 31, the Fountain Brothers American Legion Post 1619.
Whereas
Was that
Fountain
the other
Brothers
30?
Post 1619 has duly submitted to the town of Plattsburgh
That was
Town
from the
Board
last week.
an application for permit for public display of fireworks to be held on February 1st, 2019, to take place at the American Legion Post 1619, situated on Radio Road in the town of Plattsburgh. Whereas the town clerk has verified that all requirement documentation and fees have been received and reviewed by the town attorney approving the application and liability insurance coverage as informed, and the Fountain Brothers Post 1619 as the controlling agency of the land on which the public display of fireworks is to be held, having also approved and granted of said application by the town. Now therefore be resolved that the town clerk be and hereby authorized and directed to issue the required permit for public display of fireworks by the application on Friday, February 1st, 2019 at the American Legion Post 1619. And to be further resolved that a copy of this resolution be given to the finance manager, codes officer, town clerk, and Cool Insurance.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Chuck Costick, second.
Second.
LaFave, any discussion?
The only session I'll just take a look, you have the insurance for this, correct?
Yep, it's all in the packet that I gave to Debbie.
Okay.
But I had to revise it, that the county is on the holder plus the town.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and it's revised as of this date.
Okay, roll call?
Thomas Wood,
Abstain.
Meg LaFave,
Yes. Yes.
Barb Hebert,
Yes.
Charles Costick,
Yes.
Mike Cash.
Yes, resolution carries. Okay, draft material for minutes, monthly reports and disposal of obsolete equipment, the Justice Court contract with the Sheriff's Department, and going back to, I think I can answer your question if I understood your lip reading. Regal Cinemas were originally, there was a post of the Resolution 30. Last week, it got pulled. Put it down here because I'm waiting for some final confirmation for Steve, so that there wasn't any
It
confusion.
was online, that's why I.
Okay,
I did
okay.
that, but-
Because, do you remember last time?
I remember that you pulled it, but I thought maybe it had come back. I didn't know.
Well, it will likely come back during next week's
Yeah.
meeting, but I put it down further, so
Okay.
to make sure that we got every
Yeah.
information. that we
Yeah,
need.
it was on, it was online when you go on Ricky's page.
Yeah, I think we're fine, but we just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure,
Okay.
with everything that was going on there.
Oops, sorry.
No, it's online.
Is there a motion to go into executive session briefly with no action to be taken to discuss the ongoing litigation with the city of Plattsburgh?
So moved.
Hebert,
A second.
LaFave. Time entered is 7:42. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yep, Thomas Wood,
Okay.
Meg LaFave.
Yes.
Barb Hebert.
Yes.
Charles Costick.
Yes.
Mike Cash.
Yep. All right, thank you.